They put her up for sale like a piece of junk someone was desperate to be rid of, barefoot, trembling, standing alone in the snow. A man with almost nothing left pulled his beat-up pickup to a stop, looked at her, and quietly said, "I can't leave her here." He didn't know it yet, but by reaching out to her, he wasn't just saving her, he was saving himself too. And in doing so, he would change an entire town that had long since learned to turn its back on anyone who didn't fit in. Welcome to Heartland Stories. I'm Ethan Hale, and here I share true stories about honor, kindness, and quiet strength. Today, I'm going to tell you how a wrong turn off a country road led one man to the most important decision of his life, and how a 19-year-old girl, forgotten by the world, found something she'd never known before, a place to belong. This is a story about rescue, one that began in silence and despair, and ended in light, warmth, and a new kind of life. Ready to see how a real home can grow out of pain and faith? Then hit that like button, and let's begin. Snow blanketed the back road like a worn sheet, hiding whatever weight lay beneath it. Jonathan Mason gripped the wheel of his dusty Chevy as a narrow forest track opened up to an unmarked fork. He hadn't meant to stop, hadn't planned to turn off the main road. But there it was, scrawled in red paint across a rusted piece of metal. Live auction, 3 p.m., cash only. Something about it hit him. Maybe it was instinct. Maybe it was something deeper. In his wallet, $147. What was left for gas, groceries, and his daughter Sammy's inhaler, due next week. Still, Jonathan turned off the road. The clearing opened suddenly. A few old trucks circled a smoky fire pit. Men stood in silence, hunched against the cold. In the middle, a rough platform made of busted pallets. The air reeked of gas, cheap whiskey, and something nameless, something that clung under your fingernails. A man in a worn trench coat stood up on the platform. His voice rasped like gravel. "She's 19. She works. Doesn't eat much." A push. They shoved the girl forward. Barefoot in the snow. Torn jeans. Tangled dark hair. But that wasn't what stopped Jonathan cold. It was her eyes. Burned out. Hollow. Eyes of someone who already accepted that no one was coming. That no one ever would. "This ain't no shelter," someone barked. "Pay or move on. She's been through it all," another chuckled. "Who the hell's gonna take that?" She didn't cry. Didn't flinch. Jonathan didn't see a problem to fix or a life to pity. He saw a person too familiar with pain. He thought of Sammy, the day she turned blue on the couch, wheezing, as they waited for the ambulance. That helplessness. That fear. He took a step forward. "I'll take her," he said, surprised by his own voice. Laughter. Disbelief. The auctioneer squinted at him. "You serious, old man?" "I got 147, Jonathan said, pulling out the wrinkled bills. "Cash." Silence. Then a slow, dismissive nod. "She's yours. No refunds." The girl looked up, carefully, like she wasn't sure if she was dreaming. Jonathan didn't reach for her, just gave a quiet nod toward his old truck. She followed. And in that silence, in that single step across the snow, not as property, but as a person set free, something more began than just the drive home. The pickup crawled down the snow-covered back road. Tires crunched over the ice, headlights cutting through the trees like pale fingers stretching into the dark. It was warm inside the cab, but the silence made the air feel thick, like it carried a weight of its own. She sat curled up against the passenger door, arms wrapped around herself like she could disappear into her own shoulders. Her fingers had gone pale. Her lips were cracked from cold and fear. Jonathan stole glances at her, quick, quiet ones, just making sure she was still there, not vanished like a ghost. "What's your name?" he asked, eyes still on the road. Her voice was barely audible. Dry. Brittle. "Ellie." He nodded. "I'm Jonathan. Got a daughter. 7. Name's Sammy." Silence. He turned the heat up. The fan hummed louder, blowing air that might have been warm, but she didn't react. Her face didn't move. Her body didn't shift. She just kept staring out the window like she was searching the night for something she used to know. He didn't press her. Didn't ask where she was from, what had happened, or why her eyes looked so empty. That could come later, or never. For now, she was just riding beside him. And for now, that was enough. Outside, the woods kept rolling by. Inside the truck sat 2 people. one who had done the saving and one who had been saved. But neither of them really knew which was which. The headlights caught the shape of a small house tucked at the base of a hill, wrapped in dark pine trees. A thin trail of smoke drifted from the chimney. On the porch, an old light flickered, yellow and faint. It wasn't much, weathered wood siding, peeling paint, front steps that creaked when you stepped on them. But inside, it smelled like warm bread, firewood, and something long forgotten. Safety. Jonathan opened the door and stepped in without a word. Come on in. She stood frozen at the threshold. Then, slowly, she stepped across, like any wrong move might wake something she didn't want to meet. The lamplight cast a soft glow on a threadbare rug. A few pictures hung on the wall. A kid's drawing. A photo of a gap-toothed girl smiling wide. A clock ticked quietly in the corner. Ellie didn't take off her coat. Didn't sit down. Didn't move. She just stood there, looking. I'll be right back, Jonathan said, and disappeared down the hall. He returned with a faded blanket, the kind that smelled of lavender and old wood. He held it out without stepping too close. For the night. She took it, stared at the fabric for a long moment, then up at him. Why? She asked, voice barely a whisper. It wasn't an accusation. It was surprise, the kind of wonder that comes from not hearing kindness for so long you start believing it doesn't exist. He met her eyes. Calm. Because no one else was going to. And that was enough. He didn't wait for thanks. Didn't ask for anything. He just nodded toward the couch. You can sleep here, if you want. Then he turned, shut off the hallway light, and left only the lamp by the fireplace glowing. He walked away. She stayed standing a moment longer, then slowly sat down. The blanket still folded across her lap. She didn't wrap herself in it, just held it. Like unfolding it might make everything disappear. The room filled with silence. Not the threatening kind. Not the heavy kind. Just silence. The kind new beginnings are born from. Morning crept into the house in a soft gray haze. Light barely pushed its way through the frost-covered windows. The air inside smelled of coffee and wood smoke, not sharp, but warm and lived in, like someone had just stoked the stove. Ellie woke up on the couch, disoriented. The blanket was still folded neatly across her lap, just where she'd left it. Her body had rested, but her mind hadn't. Footsteps, light, quick, like a puppy's, padded across the floor. Then a voice. Daddy, is she awake yet? Ellie looked up. A girl, maybe 7, stood in the doorway. A tumble of blonde hair, mismatched socks, and the kind of curiosity only kids carry, the kind that's cautious, not fearful. Like they're sensing something they don't fully understand, but aren't afraid of. Hi, the girl said. Ellie gave a small nod. Her lips barely moved. I'm Sammy. I'm 7. Are you going to live with us now? There was a pause. Jonathan, standing in the kitchen, glanced over but didn't interrupt. I don't know, Ellie said quietly. Sammy shrugged, like it didn't really matter either way. Do you like peanut butter? Ellie furrowed her brow a little. What? Well, Sammy said, serious as can be, if you do, then we can be friends. That's kind of the rule around here. Silence. Then, just barely, the corner of Ellie's mouth twitched. Yeah, I do. Sammy grinned wide. Cool. Then I'll show you where we keep the candy. But only after breakfast. She darted back into the kitchen like a deal had just been sealed, and that was that. Ellie sat there for a moment, surprised. Not just that the girl had spoken to her, but that something inside her stirred in response. Something soft, long forgotten. Like a small bit of warmth had sparked in a place she thought was empty. Jonathan poured coffee and glanced over his shoulder. She's got her own rules, he said. But if she's decided you're a friend, well, that's that. Ellie didn't reply. But for the first time since she'd arrived, she sat up straight. Not curled in on herself. Not braced for the worst. She didn't know if she would stay. Didn't know if she could believe in any of it. But she knew one thing. Someone here, even if it was just a kid, already believed in her. And that was a start. In small towns, rumors travel faster than snow melt off a tin roof, especially when silence suddenly fills with something unfamiliar. Jonathan's house sat near the edge of the woods, tucked away and quiet. But even out there, the whispers found their way. At the feed store, someone muttered. Picked her up from God knows where. And with a kid in the house. At the post office. Saw her walking out in his sweater this morning. Tell me that's not suspicious. 2 days after Ellie first crossed his threshold, the porch steps creaked with a steady pair of footsteps. Jonathan opened the door and found Mary Harper, the widow 2 streets over, sharp-eyed and steady-handed, holding a pie. Likely cherry. She always brought cherry when she wasn't just visiting. Morning, Mary, Jonathan said calmly. Is it? She replied, stepping inside without waiting. Pie's for Sammy. She's not the one making choices here. He closed the door behind her and motioned toward the kitchen, but Mary stopped short in the middle of the living room, arms folded tight. I'm not here out of courtesy, John. I'm here because I respect you. And because this. She nodded toward the hallway. Raises questions. She's not dangerous, he said. His voice was quiet, but there was steel in it. Are you sure? She doesn't speak. Keeps her head down. Folks say you bought her off some backwoods deal. And you've got a little girl living here. Jonathan set his mug down slowly. I didn't ask for permission, Mary. I did what I thought was right. She stared at him for a long time. I hope you know what you're doing. I know this. If I hadn't stopped, no one else would have. And that girl would still be standing barefoot in the snow. And you'd be home baking this pie, never giving her a second thought. Mary looked away, left the pie on the table, gave a silent nod, then walked out without saying goodbye. Jonathan closed the door behind her and stood at the window, staring down the road for a long while. Outside, the wind had picked up a fine, swirling snow. Inside, behind the hall door, Ellie stood with her back to the wall. She had heard every word, and in her eyes, for the first time, there flickered something like trust. Faint, but real. The house was asleep. Somewhere behind the walls, an old floorboard creaked. The clock ticked slow and steady. The air felt still, the kind of stillness that settles before snowfall. Ellie stood by the window, wrapped in someone else's sweater, long, bunched around her waist, warm. It smelled like wood smoke and lavender. She held a mug of tea gone cold, untouched. Just stood there, eyes fixed on the dark outline of the trees beyond the glass. Jonathan stepped into the room quietly. No lights, no words. Just his presence, calm and nearby. She felt it, but didn't turn. I heard them, she said at last. What folks in town are saying. He said nothing. That you're putting your daughter in danger. That I'm dangerous. Broken. Worthless. She paused. The words stuck in her throat like splinters. They're almost right. Almost. Now he looked at her steady, unflinching. Almost, he said, doesn't count. She let out a dry laugh, crooked, tired. Doesn't count, she echoed. But what if I believe it? What if I spent my whole childhood being told I was a mistake? That I was just some burden nobody asked for, a bill nobody planned on paying? He didn't rush to answer. Just said quietly, You're here. So somewhere along the way, someone was wrong. And you survived. Those words went deeper than she meant them to. Like they cracked something rusted shut inside her. She bit her lip to stay still, but her voice trembled anyway. I built walls, you know? Spent years building them. To survive. To not feel. To not trust. Because when you do, and they leave again, that's not pain anymore. That's emptiness. She turned away, shoulders drawn in. Today, Sammy asked if I liked peanut butter. She let out a half laugh, tears mixing with the sound. It was so simple, so silly, and I realized. I don't know how to answer kindness. I don't know what to do with it. The tears came quiet. No sobs, no collapse. Not weakness. But the kind of tears that fall when someone finally stops holding everything in it and just lets themselves be. No one's ever chosen me just because, she whispered. Until you. Jonathan stood beside her, solid as a lighthouse in a storm. He didn't touch her, didn't pity her, just stood there, present. You're here now, Ellie, he said. And that's enough. She turned to face him, slow and unguarded. Eyes wet and raw with truth. And for the first time, she didn't look away. The morning came in bright, too bright. That strange kind of light you only get before a storm. Jonathan had left early, said he was going to help clear the road near the old Martin place. It always drifted shut first. He promised to be back by lunch, poured himself a thermos of coffee, kissed Sammy on the head. Ellie stood in the doorway, didn't ask where, just nodded. He did too. By noon, he hadn't returned. By 1, still nothing. By 2, the radio crackled with a storm warning. Visibility near zero. Temps dropping fast. His radio, usually kept in the glove box, wasn't answering. By 3, Ellie was pacing from window to door like a caged animal. Sammy sat on the couch, arms wrapped around her knees, saying nothing, but knowing enough. At 3:47, the door burst with a knock, sharp, fast. Ellie jumped to her feet. Tom Bennett stood on the porch, the mailman and part-time fire volunteer, his knit cap crusted with frost, face flushed from the cold. "He's down by the creek," Tom gasped. Tree came down, his legs pinned. "Can't get a truck through. Snow's too deep." I don't know what else to do." He said not to tell Sammy, but Tom trailed off as he saw Ellie already grabbing her coat. "Stay with her," she said, pulling on boots. "Don't open the door for anyone but me." "You won't make it," he stammered. "The storm. I'll make it." And she went. The blizzard didn't spare her. Wind clawed at her face, tore the breath from her lungs. Snow stung like sandpaper. The road vanished almost instantly. Landmarks, fences, trees, old wool tracks, gone under white. All she had was memory and stubborn, blinding will. One step, then another. "Just don't stop." She found him by the thermos. Half buried in snow, lid cracked open, like some lost proof of life. He was slumped beneath a pine, skin ghost pale, lips tinged blue. His eyes fluttered, unfocused. "Jonathan!" she shouted, dropping to her knees. He stirred weakly. "I told you not." "Don't," she whispered, crouching low. "Just breathe. That's all you need to do." His leg was pinned under the trunk, not broken, but crushed tight. She searched for a branch. Found one, thick and knotted. Jammed it under the wood. Once, nothing. Twice, it groaned. Third time, she screamed and threw her weight behind it. All the rage and fear she'd ever known in that one push. The tree shifted. He cried out, but she was already dragging him free. She hauled him through the snow inch by inch, her arms numb, knees slipping, lungs burning. Somehow, she got him beneath a tangle of firs that blocked the worst of the wind. She unrolled the blanket she'd grabbed before leaving, wrapped it around both of them, pulled him close, as tight as she could. His body trembled violently, cold sunk deep. "Breathe," she whispered. "Just breathe. I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. I've got you." They lay like that for nearly an hour. The storm raged on, but she shielded him with her body. She thought of nothing else, only keeping him alive. When she finally heard the engine, she almost didn't believe it. A snowmobile. Tom, back with help. 2 more volunteers behind him, one with a rescue blanket, the other a medic from a neighboring district. "They're alive," Tom called out, seeing her wave. Everything moved fast after that. They checked his vitals, wrapped him in layers, loaded him gently onto the stretcher. Ellie swayed but didn't fall. When someone asked if she needed help, she just nodded toward Jonathan. Help him first. They rode back to the cleared road, where an ambulance waited. Then, straight to Berkeley County Hospital. Sirens on. Roads cleared ahead. In the hospital room, Jonathan lay hooked up to an 4. The doctor looked from the chart to Ellie. If you'd gotten to him any later, maybe half an hour tops, hypothermia would have shut his organs down. But you pulled him out. You saved him. Ellie stood at the window. The blizzard had passed. Only footprints remained, pressed into the snow. And in her chest, one solid, unmistakable truth. This time, no one saved me. This time, I was the one who did the saving. It had been a few days since the blizzard nearly took Jonathan from her, and since Ellie pulled him back. The house had found its rhythm again. The stove crackled softly. Sammy sat at the table drawing, her tongue tucked in concentration. Ellie stood at the stove, stirring a pot of soup, not realizing how time had started moving differently. Slower, fuller, almost real. It felt almost safe now. Almost. They showed up without warning. A black SUV. Polished boots. A coat too clean for country roads. The knock on the door came just as everything inside had settled. Ellie opened it. Her mouth went dry, like she'd swallowed dust. "Hey there, sweetheart," the woman said, a cigarette dangling from her lip. "Miss us?" Behind her stood a tall, lean man with eyes that held nothing but calculation. "We're here for our daughter," he said, like they'd come to reclaim property, not a person. Jonathan appeared behind Ellie. He was still limping, but stood solid as ever. "You should leave," he said, voice steady. "This is illegal," the man replied, smirking. "She's a minor. You don't have papers. We've got statements. Witnesses saying you bought her. That's federal." "She's of age," Jonathan said. "And she's free. She's got no ID. No birth certificate. We've got affidavits." The woman sneered. "You've stepped into something ugly. You have no idea." Jonathan stepped forward. "You gave her up the day you put her on a wooden crate like a damn item at a yard sale. You're not parents. You're sellers. And your rights ended the moment your decency did." The man narrowed his eyes. "Then we'll see you in court." He pulled a business card from his coat and flicked it onto the doormat like a challenge, then turned and walked off. Understood. The court hearing was held in a neighboring county, far enough from the whispers, but not the wait. The room was cold. Ellie sat beside Jonathan's attorney, Laura Keene, a woman whose eyes had seen worse and never flinched. Across the aisle sat her parents. Their lawyer spoke fast, smooth, papers lost, jurisdiction unclear, claims of kidnapping. Then Ellie stood. The judge, a woman with silver hair and a steady voice, gave her a nod. "Say what you need to say." And Ellie did. She spoke of a house with no names, of beatings that came not from punishment, but convenience, of hunger as routine, of fear as air, of how the day she was sold wasn't the end, it was the exit. "I didn't run away," she said. "I just thought it couldn't get any worse. Turns out, I was wrong, because the place that took me in, without questions, without conditions, that's where I finally learned what it meant to be human." She turned toward Jonathan. "He didn't ask who I was. He let me choose who I wanted to be. He didn't save me with money. He gave me dignity. And his daughter, she showed me that love doesn't ask for proof." She paused, voice shaking, but not from fear. "I'm not their daughter. I'm his family." The judge was silent for a long moment, then looked between the two sides. "I've seen a lot. Parents who walked away, kids who grew up in the hollow that left behind. But I don't often hear that much truth in one voice." She turned back to Ellie. "You're free, and you are exactly where you belong." The room went quiet, genuinely quiet, and for the first time in all of it, Jonathan exhaled, not because he'd won, but because she had stayed. Snow was slowly sliding off the rooftops. The sun lingered a little longer at the edge of the sky, and the air carried something soft, barely there, like the hint of spring just beginning to breathe. For Ellie, though, the day had started like any other. She didn't know her birthday. Her parents used to say winter or spring, or just forget to mention it altogether. She'd grown used to it being just another day. But this day was different. This day was for her. When she stepped into the kitchen, it was already alive with motion. Sammy, wearing a paper crown, was busy at the table where a lopsided cake sat, covered in too bright frosting and uneven candles. Next to it, a handmade banner strung across the wall. "Happy day, Ellie." The letters were out of order, but every one had been cut with care. Drawings were spread out on the table, one of the three of them holding hands beneath a big sun, another of a dog with wings and the words, "Welcome to the pack." Ellie stared at it all like it was a window into someone else's life. "This is for me?" "Of course," Sammy said. "Everybody deserves their own day, even if you don't know when you were born. Then we pick one. Today. Because today, you're with us." Ellie laughed, a real laugh, then choked up, then just sat down. Not like a guest, like someone home. The day unfolded in cozy chaos. They baked, stole bites off spoons, and Sammy led a full tour of the house's secret spots, where the chocolate was hidden, the softest pillow stash, the corner where the dog hides during thunderstorms. All day long, Ellie kept catching glimpses of Jonathan's eyes. Quiet, unintrusive, but full of something unmistakable. Acceptance, not because of anything she'd done, but simply because she was there. By evening, the cake was gone, and a peaceful hush settled over the room. Jonathan walked over, holding a small box wrapped in old newspaper and tied with twine. "I've been thinking about this for a while," he said, "and I realized. It's not about the past. It's about what we choose now. Ellie opened the box. Inside was a ring, simple, thin, with a soft blue stone. Not flashy, but deep. It belonged to Emma, he said quietly. My wife. She used to say a home isn't a ring on your finger. It's what you build every day through choice, through care. And you've become a part of that. You're one of us. Ellie looked at the ring for a long time, then at him. His eyes held no pressure, just an open hand. I'm not sure how to, she began, but her voice faltered. He stepped in, gently. You don't have to be anything. Just be here, if you want to. Her fingers trembled as she lifted the ring, but her voice was steady. I already chose. It started with a smell. A thin ribbon of smoke, faint, like someone burning dry leaves far off. Then came the low hum. Then the fire. Wind picked up fast, turning sparks into something louder than flames, like a whisper turning into a scream. The ridge beyond the hill was burning. Jonathan stood on the porch, still limping, his leg wrapped tight from the fracture. Sammy clung to his side, her small hand wrapped around his coat sleeve. Ellie was already ahead of them. Coat thrown over her shoulders, hair messy, eyes sharp, alert. They've opened the church for evac, Jonathan said. We need to go. You're coming with us. She shook her head. No. I know these woods. There are folks who won't get out in time. I can help. Ellie. You said I'm part of this house. Well, this is my land now too. I protect it. Same as you. And she ran. Didn't look back. At the fire line, the town had gathered, not firefighters, just folks with something to lose. Teachers. Farmers. Mechanics. Ellie didn't ask what to do. She started giving orders. Cut a break here. Don't let the flames near the houses. Clear that pin fast. She moved like it mattered. Because it did. But everything changed when she heard the barking. Boomer. Jonathan's old dog. He'd stayed behind, near the shed. Always did. Like he was guarding memories no one talked about. No. She breathed and took off. The shed was already burning. Roof sagging. Walls popping with heat. Flames licking up the sides of the fence. Boomer whimpered from behind the shed, trapped. Ellie ripped off her coat, pulled it over her head, and ran straight into the smoke. Fire singed her sleeve. She coughed, eyes burning, but she didn't stop. Come on, old man, she whispered. Come on, Boomer. The dog burst around the corner, ears pinned back, fur covered in ash. She grabbed his collar, turned to run. And then, Ellie. Jonathan. He was hobbling toward her, pain in every step, but panic in his eyes. Not for the fire. For her. She shouted back, and just then, the earth beneath the shed shifted. A propane tank, forgotten since winter. Explosion. The blast sent both of them flying into the snow. Sound collapsed into ringing. The sky blurred into smoke. When Ellie opened her eyes, she was lying beside Jonathan. Boomer was there too. Breathing. Alive. So were they. Jonathan turned to her. You're out of your damn mind, he whispered. Ellie coughed, then laughed. Get used to it. I live here now. They put the fire out by sunrise. 3 homes lost. But not a single life. And the town. The town started speaking differently. She pulled that dog and man out herself. Gave orders like she was born in those woods. I was wrong. We were all wrong. And folks started looking at her with something new. Not suspicion. Respect. Not like she didn't belong. Like she finally did. The field behind the house was in bloom, as if winter had never touched it. Tall grass swayed in the breeze, whispering with every movement. The sky stretched wide and open, endless, like a road without a finish line. It smelled like honey, sunshine, and something else, something you don't describe, you just feel. A little time had passed. After the court. After the fire. After everything. They never talked about a wedding, not really. No date was picked, no plans made. But one morning, Ellie walked into the kitchen, looked Jonathan in the eyes, and said, I'm ready. Not for a wedding. For the step. For life. He just smiled. The wedding had no dresses, no ties, no crowd. Just the 3 of them. Jonathan stood barefoot in a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. Ellie wore a pale linen dress, a bit too big, but it fit her just right. Sammy ran barefoot through the grass, picking wildflowers, laughing in that free, pure way only kids can, when they know, deep down, that everything is exactly as it should be. No rings. They already had those. No vows. Everything had already been said. No guests. Just witnesses, the sky, the grass, and birds flying overhead. Jonathan looked at her like it was the first time, even though he looked at her that way every day. You weren't lost, Ellie, he said. You were just waiting for someone to really see you. She nodded, didn't look away. And you didn't find me, Jonathan. You just brought me back to myself. Sammy came bounding over with a bouquet of dandelions, both fists full. You're officially family now, she announced. That's my rule. They laughed. Softly. Warmly. Then came silence, but not the kind that weighs. The kind that fills. Presence, not absence. They stood hand in hand, ankle deep in the grass, barefoot under an open sky, unburdened by anything but memory. And then both of them whispered, "Thank you." Not to each other. To fate. For the road that brought them here. For the right to be here. Alive. Together. A home in each other. If this story moved you, go ahead and like the video and subscribe. I'll see you next time.